Okay, are we good to go?
One more second, let me just get the YouTube up. All right, Mr. Mayor, you're good to go.
Thank you very much. Welcome everybody to the June 5th meeting of the Burlingame City Council. This is a study session tonight for our formal meeting at 7 p.m. I forget, it's been a while since we've done a public study session. Do we do roll call for this or we don't?
Yes,
We
we
do.
do roll call.
So could we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Stevenson,
Present.
Councilmember Ortiz,
Here.
Councilmember Beach,
Here.
Vice Mayor Coulson,
Here.
Mayor Bradway.
Here. Everybody present and accounted for. Appreciate the blue cards, but since we're here for leaf blowers, if you want to speak on leaf blowers, you'll have your chance to do that no matter what. Do we do pledge?
We don't do pledge, but we should also allow for disclosure of SB 1439 conflicts.
Okay. I forget now how we do this. Can you remind me what I'm supposed to do with 1439?
Sure. You can invite any council member that may have a SB 1439 conflict.
Thank you.
You disclose it on the record.
Would any member of the council like to disclose a 1439 issue, I guess is the right word?
No, Mr. Mayor, no, this new law requires closures for certain political contributions more than $250. And I am unaware of any contribution that meets these conflicts. And if anybody else knows of anything on the agenda, not only study session, but for the rest of the evening, please contact the city clerk. Thank you. Is
Perfect.
that okay that I knocked that out, Megan, for the entire
I
meeting?
think we should do it again at the regular,
Okay, sorry. Thank you.
but thank you.
In that case, then we can get started with the study session. Am I right? Okay, perfect. Well, tonight we decided to meet ahead of time to talk about an update to whether we should be updating our leaf blower policy. We went to great trouble, whatever that was, 8 or 9 years ago, 7 years ago, a long time ago, to try to reduce the impact on residents of unmitigated, unregulated leaf blowing, and came up with a pretty good system. But there was a lot of interest in looking at whether it needed to be updated, whether we needed to rethink in light of recent developments. So we invited Segal Michael, our sustainability director, to come and present the issue and allow for a conversation with our residents and with ourselves about whether we want to go further. So over to you.
Thank you, Mayor and council members, for having me here tonight. And exactly like you said, the presentation will cover both some staff recommendations and also discussion points that we could use direction and guidance on. Next slide, please. So the 3 areas we'll be covering is we're going to be focusing on leaf blowers just versus all lawn equipment, and be talking about noise aspects, pollution, and then incentives. Next slide, please. So we do have an existing ordinance. I think it's older than 10 years old. And basically what it does is it divides our city up into 3 zones. And then each zone has its own days of being able to use leaf blowers to help control noise. And then there's a fine and for any violations. And on Mondays and Wednesdays, there's absolutely no blowers throughout the city. And we recommend to leave the schedule as is. It seems to be working. And we've actually heard from other cities that look to us as an example of how to limit blower noise in their neighborhoods. Next slide. The issue area, more with our existing ordinance, is the decibels. Our ordinance now requires that all equipment be certified no louder than 65 decibels. And it asks for people to, or commercial gardeners or people, to bring their leaf blowers over to Public Works, have them tested with a decibel machine, and then put a sticker on it. And that's the sticker on it. That is just, we found, beyond the scope of resources, both for our parks crew and our compliance enforcement officer. So we haven't really been enforcing that aspect. When there is a letter of violation, our enforcement compliance officer goes out with flyers and provides them in English and Spanish. And actually enforcing those leaf blowers, if someone tells her it's over 65 decibels, she doesn't really have a way of seeing what it truly is. So our staff recommendation here is to remove that decibel requirement and update the ordinance. Next slide. Our complaint history is quite varied. To be honest, I thought it would tell a different story, but you could see this past year's 31, before then 8, before then 22, maybe through the COVID year. So we're not talking about a huge number of complaints, but it seems that the complaints we get tend to come straight to council or be, call for attention, and we want to pay attention to those. And it's a good reason to still review our ordinance and see where we could improve. And that's an example of the flyers that we give out in Spanish and English. Next slide, please. Oh,
Will
go ahead.
say that I think a lot of communication goes on between neighbors and gardeners that don't then turn into complaints to the city. But those are the formal complaints to the city.
Yeah. So, leaf blowers is not just an issue in Burlingame. It is a hot issue in all cities in California. And more so than that, it's the pollution associated with all small engines like leaf blowers, mowers. And ARB has adopted a rule, AB 1346, to ban the sale of new gas small off-road engines, acronym SOAR, starting in January 2024. So that feels pretty around the corner. And it basically means you cannot buy new equipment in California. Obviously, a lot of equipment will still be in use, but no new equipment will be sold. And I thought it was interesting just seeing the impact of these equipment. ARB estimates that the cumulative impact of all the SOAR engines is more than single passenger vehicles in California because they're high polluting. Next slide.
That is a striking statistic.
Yeah.
It'd be more than all vehicles.
Yeah. So I wanted to, cities are exploring incentives, including the state. I'll start with the top, the California Core Off-Road Incentive. So as soon as California passed that rule, they also offered what they call a Core Off-Road Incentive vouchers or rebates to give professional landscapers. When I looked online, I remember when the program came out and we did outreach and we got information on it, and now it's already been closed because it reached its funding cap. And there is an interactive map on the website, and it shows that 6 have been paid to date in San Mateo County. So it doesn't feel like that impactful of a program in our area. And I'm assuming they're going to request more funding and it'll continue to grow. But in the first year, it hasn't really made much of an impact in San Mateo. But looking around in other cities, one of the few that I found that offers incentives straight to commercial or residential owners is City of San Mateo. They do give a rebate. The way they structure it is for commercial, you could get 75% of purchase price up to $500. They've given 8 rebates to date. I think this is from 2021, but I would say I think a limiting factor maybe in their program is that a professional gardener needs a San Mateo business license, because some of these gardeners come from all over and travel up and down the peninsula, and that may be a limiting factor in why they're not getting as many as they'd hope. And then for the resident rebate, you could get 50% up to your purchase price, and they've given out 32 rebates, which is, not huge, but it's substantial. It's made some impact in their city, and they're continuing that program for a second year, or I think they're on their 3rd year. Next slide. So some cities have looked at or have adopted a complete gas leaf blower ban. That means that electric leaf blowers are allowed, but a complete ban on gas. So this list of cities is growing. Town of Portola Valley banned gas leaf blowers starting in January 2021, Oakland in 2021, Alameda, Novato, and City of Palo Alto, well, I guess Los Altos even older, 1991. But City of Palo Alto since 2005 has banned gas leaf blowers. I spoke with Oakland and Palo Alto to get an idea of how it's working in those cities. In Oakland, they said that they're not enforcing it. So it's banned on paper, but they don't have the staff or resources, and they haven't put in the commitment to ban it. In Oakland, it's banned from use and from sale at retail shops. And they have not enforced that either. They haven't gone to their Home Depots or whatever to see if they're being sold there. And then for Palo Alto, recently they are upping their enforcement, and they have a full-time compliant enforcement officer just for leaf blowers. Now they do get about 150 complaints a month, so much higher than what's happening here in Burlingame. And their enforcement, they recently increased their violation up to $250.
Sorry, the vice mayor points out. It
Is there-
must be,
I-
it must be.
Yeah, I think it's
Fire
been hired,
and-
not fired.
Hired.
Oh, shoot. I'm sorry. Hired, not fired.
I was like, wait.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so they hired a full-time officer to help with really enforcing gas, because as you can imagine, it's difficult. Someone calls up, says there's a blower being used. The officer runs over there. The gardener's already finished. You know, it's hard to be on top of it. Next slide. Oh, I think, yeah. So I also wanted to mention, you know, whatever we do, if we want to, I guess what I wanted to say before is if we want to think about some sort of limitation on gas leaf blowers. And if we do, we also need to think about how it would affect our municipal operations. So our municipal operations, our parks crew specifically, has really interested in investing in electric landscape equipment, and they really started experimenting with it a while ago. And they've had much success with their larger equipment, but blowers are still a challenge. And maybe also part of it is also because the electric leaf blowers just aren't up to par yet with the gas leaf blowers. They cost a lot more, they weigh more, and they don't last as long as gas leaf blowers. And I did alter the next slide. Go ahead. On the next slide, I note how much an electric professional backpack blower costs versus a gas. And I did alter those numbers since the presentation went out to the public. So I just wanted to make note of that. I got numbers updated from our director of Parks and Rec. But if we were to consider, and I think it's still, you know, a good conversation to have, if we were to consider some sort of limitation or ban on gas leaf blowers, there's a lot more things that I would recommend to study further. There's the affordability, equity considerations, outreach, how to reach out to gardeners where often English may not be the first language, and thinking about how to do our code enforcement. You know, we don't want to just adopt something that we don't have a way to enforce. So there's a whole bag of things that we should consider. Next slide. So what I was hoping we could talk about today is if we could agree if we want to leave the time of day restrictions, if we're comfortable removing the decibel requirements, if there's any thoughts about a ban or limiting gas equipment, or looking into providing incentives. And then one incentive that came up too was not just offering, let's say, a rebate, but whoever decides to use electric maybe gets more days out of the week where they could actually use that equipment. And that could be a big benefit both for our municipal operations and also maybe for professional gardeners and private residential owners if they can use their equipment more days if they have electric. So now I open it to discussion.
Thank you very much. So just quick ground rules. This is an item that obviously has a number of public comments and public interest. So I want to make sure we have time to hear from the public. So what I'd like to do is ask colleagues to pose any questions right now to Sigal, to Director Michael, and then we'll move into public comment, and then we'll finish with a conversation and next steps. Yes, Councilmember Stevenson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to go, a question about those cities that have been, chosen to have ordinances that are much more strict. You mentioned Palo Alto, Los Altos, Oakland. Do we have a sense of what conversion towards electric they've actually accomplished? In other words, I know some of them have enforcement, some don't. But what is the policy, or what is the ordinance actually led to in terms of the mix between gas and electric?
I don't know. I did ask that of Palo Alto and they didn't know themselves if they could give a number, but that would be some more research that would need to be conducted. But I imagine that could be difficult.
I would imagine that early on anyway, in the 90s, it must have been a shift to rakes. I mean, there weren't electric leaf blowers.
Yeah.
Very much.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yes, Councilmember.
Actually,
Oh, sorry.
okay, so I'm intrigued by the idea of, first of all, thank you for your presentation, thank you, but I'm intrigued with the idea of allowing more days for the electric leaf blowers. So were you thinking, so the gas leaf blowers would be allowed one day in each neighborhood and you would increase it to maybe 3 or 4 or just be unlimited for the?
That could be up to discussion. Rachel Norwood, our code and compliance officer, actually came up with that idea as a suggestion that she thinks could be successful, but we haven't hashed out the details. But it could be unlimited, or we could add 2 more days. Maybe we want to keep Monday and Wednesday with no blowers, so maybe just the 3 days a week they would be allowed.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councilmember Beach.
Thank you for the presentation. I'd like to understand more about what in the electric leaf blowers require more labor. I wasn't sure I understood what that.
From what I understand, part of it is replacing the batteries because it doesn't go as long. So they would need to take it back to the shop and put in a new battery if this is for professionals. And one challenge may also be to go from site to site and how to keep those blowers charged. Then professional landscapers may not feel comfortable plugging into a house. And the last thing we want is for them to be trucking around a generator, to keep those batteries charged. Margaret, go ahead.
I'm only speaking for parks and our staff, but I'll give you an example. So we have electric blowers, we have battery operated blowers, and we have walk behind blowers that are gas operated. So take Washington tennis courts as your frame of reference. If we use our walk behind blower, it takes about half an hour to blow those courts. If we do a backpack gas blower, it takes about 45 minutes. And if we use an electric blower, it takes an hour and a half. They're just not as powerful. They don't blow as much. That's part of the problem. They distribute more in the air. So for us, the impacts would be, so instead of us closing, say, the tennis courts for an hour to blow, once a week, then we have to close them down for an hour and a half or a longer window of time to be able to get staff over there. And it was funny because, while it takes more staff time, and obviously our staff is not unlimited, we would prefer to see all electric and have less restrictions on days. Because one of our challenges is we can't blow till 8 a.m. However, all our parks, especially in nice weather, people are out there by 8 a.m. And so we can't blow when there's a lot of activity on the park. And the way the restrictions go for us, so on Tuesdays and Thursdays, between like 8 and 8:30, 9 o'clock, staff have to get to Trenton, Paloma, Pershing, City Hall, the library, Primrose, Alpine, and Laguna, all at the same time, and we don't have that many people out there. So they'll do their best to blow whatever they can, but not everything's going to get blown, more than once a week. So we do get complaints, in particular playgrounds with sand. While sand is great, good news, we're narrowing down less and less playgrounds have sand, even though it's a coveted play item for kids, because the sand gets knocked out of the sandbox and it's all over the park. But if we can't blow it till the next week, then the sand stays where it is. And we just don't have the bandwidth to sweep everything up. So that is why it might take longer to get some work done. It's just the strength of the equipment you're using.
But don't want to lose track of your first comment, which is if we were choosing, we'd be happy with all electric if we had more flexibility on timing.
For us and more funds to make sure we can buy the equipment, but.
Right.
I mean, we knew this was coming down, so we have been, I'm sure you've seen it every year in the budget. We have been diligently asking for funds to go to battery to test them out, so we were ready for it when it came. It just takes more staff time.
Thank you.
Mm.
Thank you, Director Glomstad. Are there any other questions for Director Michael? Meeting adjourned.
Apparently open for public comment.
So we are going to open for public comment. I would like to start with the people who are here live. And so that is the people in the audience. And then if there is anybody online, and then to the degree that we have additional time, we can read some of the comments that we received in email. I do want to say for the record, every email that comes in, we all read. So we have read them. Nevertheless, if we have time, we'll read them into the record as well. So with that, I would invite, and I don't have a particular order. You know how this works. There's a 3-minute limit. If you keep it to a little less than that, then it'll be easier to hear from everybody, but it's up to you. And I will open it up for public comment. Who'd like to go first? Thank you, Michael.
Okay, thank you. First off, it's fascinating reading the staff report and to realize that it was 2012 when CEC first brought this issue to council 11 years ago. And it was very contentious at that time. Okay, a lot of strong feelings on both sides. And I think we were generally pleased, let me also point out, with a lot of research and help from Joanna, who I'm sure you can hear from very soon. But we were generally pleased with the result. At least I know in my neighborhood, I'm only going to hear the blowers on Tuesdays. But now that I see what else is happening, I've kind of lost touch with the issue, and the staff report brought me up to date. Now that I see it, I think it's really important, you know, to recognize that this gas-powered equipment is going to be on its way out, just like gas water heaters ultimately, and gas ranges and so forth. And I think it's our duty to help speed that process. So I hope that the council will come up with methods and incentives that send out a strong message that the days of this kind of gas equipment for various health and climate reasons, those days are numbered. So right now, if a gardening company needs a new leaf blower, maybe their thinking is, oh, I better buy it soon because the gas leaf blowers aren't going to be available in California much longer. I would rather have them get the feeling that the days of gas leaf blowers are numbered. I might as well take advantage of an incentive. I'll do what I can. I'll get on board. I will be ready for the changes. So with that in mind, I would like to see Burlingame put a gas leaf blower mandate, basically forbid them on the calendar a year or two down the pike, okay? So that the gardening industry knows what's coming and they can be prepared. In the meantime, find any incentive programs that you can offer, okay? But I'd like to see consistent messaging here that no, we aren't going to cling to the old equipment. You know, we got to catch up and move on with the new. Okay. And I also hope you read Terry Nagel's letter very carefully. She laid out a lot of good reasons here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The author of the ban.
Mr. Mayor, honorable council members, excuse me. So I want to address a couple things. First of all, there's a lot of information in the report I wrote 10 years ago about how cities handled this. Southern California did a very good job in Laguna Beach and Santa Monica creating incentive programs. But I think the most important point to piggyback on what Mike just said is that there's new technology, and the new technology is a hardscape sweeper, and sweeper isn't really the correct word for this thing. It looks like you can get industrial ones that are this big, you can get ones that are the size of a lawnmower, and they're resilient enough to pick up cans on hardscape. So between that and a mulching mower that doesn't require gardeners to take bags full of leaves somewhere else and puts the mulch right back into the turf, and turf is slightly on its way out. And now leaf vacuums. And I'm about to go witness one tomorrow. That's a residential one. So that I think that the conversation really can be about what we can create. So what Santa Monica did that was so progressive is they had a trade-in program and they certified their gardeners as green gardeners. And I really have to give credit to the gardeners because my experience in my neighborhood, which is a condo apartment neighborhood over here, we had crazy leaf blower noise before the ordinance. Now, if somebody is violating and I go out and say, hey, did you know this? I'd say in the course of 10 years, there's only been 3 people who've been argumentative. I'm going to say, oh, didn't know, everybody complies. So the whole idea of like crazy enforcement costs, it really, I think the neighbors are taking care of it. And so I think that's really a good community thing. Luis Rodriguez, who was the president of the Bay Area Gardeners Association 10 years ago, said to me, how about I take your laptop and give you a pencil? And I said, so for all the folks who were saying rakes, right? So I think we have to keep in mind that we want to be pro-business here, right? And so pro-business is really thinking about what's the next generation of stuff that's coming down the line for these guys, because the savings is significant. And I did this fuel analysis 10 years ago. Guys with 2 leaf blowers at gas at that time, $4.39, they're going to save $6,600 a year on gas. They go to bat op mowers and trimmers. That's even more. So I think we should be being a part of that conversation. Going to more days a week makes my skin start to vibrate because, you know, now when I started, I'm a book author. I was working at home. Well, now we have volume of people who live here working at home. So electric is a different decibel, but the issue with noise is really not the amount of noise, it's the range of the noise. The higher the noise, the higher the pitch, the more it bothers the brain. And I have in my report UCSF doctors who will validate that, and I can go back and bring them up if we need to. When I went to the air quality control meeting, I got invited to go to Central Coast. What was significant, what stunned me, is that they noticed that their particulate matter was particularly high when they had an increase in ER visits for heart disease, hypertension, and other related lung disorders. So I think we need to start thinking about the workers and not just the neighbors. Pro-business, think about what's coming down the pipe in terms of new equipment and really be part of the solution. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Nagler.
Mr. Mayor, I'm just going to warn you, my buzzer isn't working on my clock tonight, but so I'll just let people wrap it up once they get over this.
That would be fine. I'd also, could you just rotate that so I can see it? Because I have no idea. Time. There, that's fine. Thank you. Okay, please come join us if you have something. Thank you.
Hi there, Jay Kirshner, resident in Burlingame. Been here for 14, 15 years. I'm one of the lead probably complainants of people abusing the leaf blower ordinance as we know it today. And I'm here to encourage the council to take action to ban gas leaf blowers for many of the reasons that have already been mentioned. I will note that at least the website that I just referenced, there are several other cities that have banned the leaf blowers, gas leaf blowers, including Mill Valley, Sonoma.
Let me just ask you to pause for a second. Could I, excuse me, can we just keep it down a little bit on the outside? We have people who are trying to talk. Why don't you just hold off for a second? Yeah, we won't pay attention to the time. Okay, I think it's quieter. Go ahead, Mr.
Yeah, so there's other cities like Mill Valley, Sonoma, Los Gatos, Berkeley, that I think are more comparable comparisons to the size and population of Burlingame. So I would encourage the staff to talk to those cities to figure out what challenges did they encounter in making this transition, and how can we learn from their best practices to make it successful. I mean, leaf blowers are going to be banned for sale in the state of California in a year, so this is going to happen. So we should get out in front of it. And I encourage you all to learn from all the constituents and make a sound and speedy decision.
Thank you
Thanks.
very much for being here tonight with us. Is there anybody else in the audience here with us in person who would like to comment on the leaf blower matter? There will be there'll be more time in a few minutes. Seeing none, then is there anybody online who'd like to join?
Yes,
Oh,
I
there
have.
we go. Please come up. Please come join us.
I haven't done this before. I think it's pretty hard to go after Joanna. She pretty much said it all, and she said it very well. I want to thank you all up there on the council who have already shown your commitment to climate action in various ways. I think this is just an extension of it. I don't think we can put this off. I don't think we can rely on what the state is doing in 2024. We know that there are still going to be gas leaf blowers everywhere if that's what we do. We've put a big burden on our children with the greenhouse gases that our parents and our generation have been spewing into the air. And this just feels like a way we could try and take care of a problem now instead of putting the burden on them. The only other thing that I wanted to mention, I just want to agree with Ms. Nagler, like adding more days to leaf blowing doesn't really feel like a good option. It's really nice when you only hear the noise one day a week, and changing it to every day. There's also a tremendous amount of particulate matter that's stirred up, and that would seem like a negative. I also just wanted to leave you somehow with this. These leaves that fall on the ground, some of the debris that falls on the ground, it's good for the natural environment. It's good for the insects, which maybe we don't like, but we need. I'm not sure how we need them, but I promise you the ants and the bugs, they're pretty important to how the whole world works. We know that trees, or there's a belief now that trees communicate with fungus. And every time you rake up every leaf and blow it away, that's destroyed. So I think that we could also try and remember that some of the natural environment is beautiful. And maybe we should try and re-educate people that you can mulch at your home. It would save a lot on carting leaves away. It's good for the environment, and it doesn't look bad, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else in the audience who would like to speak on this subject? Madam City Clerk, are there any people on the virtual world who would like to speak?
We do have Terry Nagel with her hand up, so
And I am keeping an eye on time.
Hi. Good evening, Mayor Brownrigg and council members. I sent you a letter already, so I won't go into everything I said before. But with regard to changing the time restrictions, I don't think that's a good idea, because a lot of people plan their lives around those quieter days of the week, especially during the pandemic, we became more work at home friendly. And I also believe that, just because the law is going into effect for 2024, it's for new gas leaf blowers, and it will be many years before people get rid of the old ones unless there's some incentive to do that. A ban would be a great idea. It would be easier to implement if we could have some incentive programs like some of the other cities have done. So I think that's a great idea. And I'm really encouraged to hear from Margaret that the city has been exploring some of the new equipment. There are some great new tools out there that homeowners should be aware of too, like the electric sweepers that will pick up not only the small debris, but even soda cans, as Joanna Nagler said, and electric mulch mowers that actually fertilize your lawn as you mow. So I think there's a lot to explore, and I encourage the city to check out all these options. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nagel, very much for your input, both in written form and tonight. Are there any other comments online? I'm not talking about written comments, I mean live.
There's no one else with their hand up.
Then in the interest of reaching a decision this evening about whether to proceed, I'd like to just have the emails that we received attached to the public record for this item. We have all read them, but I see no reason to take 5 to 10 minutes rereading them. So thank you very much to the members of the public who spoke. I'll close public hearing. And really the question before us is whether to work. It's not a decision to actually do something other than to study and figure out whether we want to proceed and on what basis. I will point out, I'm in favor of doing that. I'll just say that. I would add that while this is a smaller consideration, thanks to SB 1383, which is trying to keep organic waste out of landfill where it creates greenhouse gas, there is a significant additional cost on every single city in California to pick up organic material. And the more organic material we can leave in place, whether it's mulched or just left on the beds, the more we keep out of our waste transfer stations and the more money we save that way too, in addition to some of these other considerations. So with that, I invite comment from my colleagues. Vice Mayor Coulson, do you want to go first?
Sure, I'd be happy. So thank you very much for bringing this up. I think it's a really important topic. I think the city needs to assume the leadership role in this. I really do. I think to set the example of how this can move forward. And we can partner with people too. For example, over at Filoli, we're moving to all electric. We have 650 acres, we're a pretty big place. So there might be some things that we can learn from some nonprofits locally as well. And I prefer sort of an incentive and I appreciate that Mr. McCord suggested, that if we did put a ban in place, there'd be a very long runway before the ban actually occurred so that people could make adjustments. But I like the incentive to increase the awareness and the use. And this could be an idea that we could pursue with Peninsula Clean Energy, where we have been doing a lot of incentives to move people from gas to electric appliances. And I consider these an appliance. So the organization has quite a significant amount of money that we've set aside to start working on programs. And if it was of interest to colleagues, I'd love to present that to them and ask them to consider putting together something like this, because I think that if they put this out to cities and said, we'll help with a rebate program or some kind of incentive program, I think there would be a lot of interest in it. But the one thing I want to point out is I think it's also on the homeowners to also do this. And in fact, what I've done in my house is I personally banned gas blowers from my own home. And I purchased an electric blower that has a cord and that operates. And so when my gardener comes to my house, he picks up my electric blower and then he does his thing, not much. I'm kind of a rake type girl. I prefer that. But for example, on the street, just where maybe there's debris, and then they put it back. And if we incentivize the homeowners in this town and say, help your gardeners out, because this is the issue. The issue is in order for a commercial gardener to have a blower that will last the entire day, they have to have almost like 3 or 4 of them in their car or big batteries, and they have to change them out and they're very heavy. So if individual homeowners had them accessible for people to use. So I noticed in a lot of these incentive programs, they were incentivizing the gardeners, which is great, and we should do that. But I think we should also educate and incentivize the homeowners, the apartment owners, and the other commercial building owners to provide equipment for their gardeners. And so, kind of with that, I think that those are some sort of good places to start. And I wouldn't be opposed to a commercial ban down the road, but I think we just need a little bit of a runway to educate people and figure out how to help pay for that so that it's an equity issue and everybody can afford it and participate.
And I appreciate that last comment. I do think one of the things we each want to address is whether we see a ban. And then the question is how you get there. So I think you laid out both. So Councilmember Ortiz.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor. A few years ago, my neighbor's gardener was using a gas leaf blower, and I just went outside and I said to him, actually in Spanish, I let him know that that was not allowed and that we never had a problem before. A few years later, I had an issue with a neighbor across the street who was using a gas blower the wrong day. And I didn't have a chance by the time I went out there, they were gone. So I went and knocked on the homeowners' doors and let them know we haven't had a problem since. So just bringing back to something that Ms. Naylor said that I agree completely. Yeah, the enforcing comes back to us and we do it and we talk to our neighbors and I think that's working. So I don't have an issue with that. I do believe that it's a good idea to ban the gas powered leaf blowers. And I do agree with Mr. McCord about the runway. I agree with Vice Mayor Colson. So I'm in favor of it, but not as immediate, but we just give notice and do it over after a few years. I don't know that I need 5 years, but a couple of years.
That'll be part of what gets discussed.
Yeah, thank you. That's it.
So thank you very much. Yes, Councilmember Beach.
No, thank you. Appreciate the discussion and the education. I learned a lot tonight. No, I agree. If we're serious about our climate action goals, and we know that 50% of our carbon emissions come from not only transportation, but these kinds of engines in the transportation sector, then we've got to begin to study how to phase them out. I do think that I appreciate Vice Mayor Colson's comments about incentives. I think part of the voices that are missing tonight are the gardener community, probably because they're among the lowest paid workers and they're probably out working another minimum wage job or something this evening and didn't even know about this meeting. So when you're looking at $2,500 versus $600, that means a lot. So we've got to figure out how to pay for it, how to pay for these incentives. And I would love for staff to come back and help us get creative about working with some of our advocates and our nonprofits. Can we sponsor a gardener? Can we use some of our transportation fees in a creative way if we're reducing emissions or something? I don't know. Is there something we can use to help pay for this transition? Can we have some common equipment that we share, or can we have charging stations at our public works yard or in our parks that we can help facilitate this for homeowners or for gardeners? I just hope that there's a creative way we can make this practical, because I think this is a really important thing from a public health perspective, from a carbon emissions, and from doing the right thing with noise. But we've just got to figure out how to make it work. And all this outreach has to be in English and in Spanish and probably other languages as well. So got to think about that. Thank you so much. Appreciate further study on this.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Councilmember Stevenson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with almost 100% of everything set up here on the dais. I absolutely support a ban. I think the leadership of the city owes it to our community to take the lead on that and establish an update to the ordinance to put that in motion. I think the creativity, the collection of incentives on one end, the education on another end, the role of the community in this process. That's why I want to make sure we study other cities that have put bans and find out mechanisms that have helped drive that conversion faster than not. Because I do think the challenge is the economics are a little bit like, 10 years ago adopting solar and when it really didn't pencil out. So you relied a lot on the passion of the person who wanted to make their personal commitment to that. So I do think we need to learn from what we can. And that would include other technologies, because frankly, I don't know why we blow at all. Principally, yes, we like clean environment and things, but clean environment is an education to say, what does that mean? When our neighbor, I don't have a a blower anymore, and I don't have a gardener that comes and blows, so maybe I'm not the right person to comment on this. But the reality is when they blow, I'm just getting all the debris and stuff from my neighbors.
Mhm.
And so that's just shifting it around. So it seems a little short-sighted in terms of how we could actually address this, and it won't start unless we put a stake in the ground.
Thank you for that. I agree. And I'll close with this, more or less on time. I think it's pretty clear marching orders. There's obviously some tweaks that we'll work through, and we'll have a session and talk about some of the different choices. I do think that it's important to move towards a ban, because if you don't do a ban, you are never going to see a switch, because anybody who's using a blower will outcompete somebody who's using a rake. So you can't, we have to level the playing field at the quality level that we want, and that's not gas powered blowers. For me, the single most striking comment in the staff report, I had heard loosely that, California's banned, gas powered blowers. So if you hear that loosely, you think, well, this is going to happen. Like, what do we need to get involved? Well, they didn't ban gas. They banned, as somebody said, Mr. Kirshner said, they banned the sale of new ones. The old ones will be with us for a decade or longer. They are not only highly polluting, they're highly robust and easily repaired. So they're not going anywhere unless we make them go away. And I think that was the item I took away. So appreciate this conversation. Appreciate very much the input from the public. These kind of initiatives really work best when they come from the bottom up as opposed to the top down. So appreciate all the comments that we've received in email and over the last several weeks, in some cases months, some cases longer, from residents who would like to get rid of these leaf blowers. So with that, I will end the public meeting, and I'll just give members a moment to leave, and then we'll open up the formal council meeting for everybody who's interested in that. So thank you all. Thank you for being here. Well, let me go see.
Right here.
Oh, thank you. Oh,
He's in the back. He's in the back. He's got glasses on. I suggested maybe. Be good to do that up.
I'm gonna run out to the restroom. I'll be back.
I'll stretch for something.
Nope, that's right.
I mean, we only have two. We have life saving. I would hate to have that option for wait. Or. I think he's here with his family.
I wonder if we should do.
Oh, sorry, Michael. I just wanted to leave him a note. I just realized I was gonna rip everything. So I ripped it a little bit. Okay. I just was writing you a note that we have.
Yeah. So I'm gonna limit 2 minutes. Yeah, I'm gonna do the presentations first.
Yeah.
So we're gonna keep. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I lost 2 of my colleagues. Where did Ricardo? Ricardo's walking back.
Maybe you could broadcast.
Make an announcement, so they can hear out there.
If the vice mayor could rejoin us, we'll get started. Okay. As the vice mayor makes her way back up to the dais, we'll get started. Welcome to the June 5th meeting of the Burlingame City Council. I'll call the meeting to order at 7:04. And as always, we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'd like to ask our old friend and advisor, Michael McCord, to lead us in the pledge.
Of the United States of America. One nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Okay. If we can have the roll call, please, Madam City Clerk.
Councilmember Stevenson,
Here.
Councilmember Ortiz,
Here.
Councilmember Beach.
Here.
Vice Mayor Colston.
Here.
Mayor Brownridge.
Here. There are no members participating remotely, so we can dispense with item 4. We did have a closed session this evening. Mr. City Attorney, was there anything to report out?
No reportable action. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It takes us to upcoming events. Always a fun moment in our agenda. We have a number of events to share with our residents. First, on June 7th in Mills Canyon, CAL FIRE and our crack Park and Rec team will be doing fuel reduction work. So that's Wednesday and Thursday through June. So apologies to anybody who likes to hike in Mills Canyon. It will be a little noisier, and there will be some trails that may be closed for for trail maintenance and fire reduction. We are recruiting a person in our Park and Rec department to help with senior programming and fitness programming. So if that's of interest, please go online and you can find it through Park and Rec. For the seniors in our community, we have a bingo night at Benihana on June 15th. I'm sorry, not a bingo night, a bingo afternoon from 3 to 5 p.m. So that would be a great time. Please come along. I'm sure you have to sign up. So go on again to Parks and Rec. And then finally in Park and Rec, we are beginning the adult co-ed softball league again. And if you're interested, please reach out to Kevin Gresh. And I won't give you his email, but you can find him again in the Park and Rec department. So if you're interested in co-ed softball, come and sign up. It's a lot of fun. On the library side, and I'm going to ask our librarian just in terms of ages. So we have a summer learning challenge that's going to go on through August, and June 10th at the main library and June 12th at the Eastern branch, you can sign up. But it wasn't clear to me what age group this is for. All ages. I can do it? Wow. I've got a lot to learn. Okay, well, anyway, so for everybody who's interested in taking a summer learning challenge, please see us in the main library on June 10th or in the Easton Library on June 12th. And there's more information on our library website. And then finally on June 17th, and this is a nice segue into one of our presentational items, we have a United Against Hate working group at 10:30, and not a working group, a partnership with the school district for Pride Story Time, and Natalie Delahunt, who's the assistant principal at Laurel Elementary School, will come along and read stories that have a message of acceptance and tolerance and support and salute LGBTQ community and their family members. So June 17th, 10:30 at the library. Those are the events that I have on my list. Colleagues, are there anything else that you'd like to let people know about? We do have, I should say, the joint meeting of Council and Planning Commission coming up.
Next Wednesday.
next Wednesday, what's the 14th? June 14th at 6:30. And that's an interesting time to look at some of the big programs going on in the city of Burlingame. So that's the Planning Commission and the council meeting in the Community Center for anyone who's interested. Okay, that takes us through upcoming events. At this point, I'm going to ask colleagues if they have any SB 1439 conflicts that they need to read into the record.
Mr. Mayor, there's a new law out of Sacramento that requires certain disclosures for political contributions more than $250. I just want to state on the record, I am unaware of any contributions I've received that meet this criteria. And if anybody else is aware of one of the members of the public, please contact the city clerk. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing. That takes us into our presentations. And I have a great deal of respect for everyone who's taking time out of their day. Everyone's worked hard and you're here to speak. And we want to get to the point where you're allowed to speak, but we have a couple of presentations to get through first. And I want to pay respect to those items too. So we will be efficient, but we'll also be mindful of the reason we're doing the proclamations and stuff. But I'm not forgetting that there are a lot of people here who want to talk about something else. So thank you for being here. So our first presentation, and do I turn to our chief of police? Chief of Police, come and join us, please, Chief Matucci. Oh, for heaven's sake, hold your applause. There's something far more interesting about to happen and somebody well worth applauding. And so I'm not going to steal the chief's thunder.
Give me a few minutes tonight to recognize one of our officers for their efforts a few weeks back. Before I start, I'd like to introduce you to the officer and give you a little bit of his background. So we have Officer Daniel Thompson here tonight. So Officer Thompson was hired in June of 2019. Actually, it will be 4 years exactly on Saturday, I believe. So back in 2019, he was putting himself through the police academy at CSM. We went up there on a recruiting trip and we hired him. And he is not disappointed. In a short time, he has become a well-rounded and successful member of our department. He has already done an assignment with CRT, our community response team, and is set to start a traffic motor officer assignment this summer. So he just recently completed the very, very difficult motorcycle school. And he has clearly paid attention in our first aid trainings because of what brings us here tonight. On the evening of Monday, April 3rd, Officer Thompson responded to a medical call where a male caller reported that he was bleeding from his leg. It was later determined to be a ruptured vein caused by a pre-existing medical condition. Officer Thompson arrived less than 90 seconds after being dispatched. He was by himself and arrived before any other medical personnel. He made contact with the male caller and found an extensive amount of blood pooled on the floor of the man's home, approximately 2 liters, according to Central County Fire personnel. Although the man had wrapped rags around his injury, he was still actively bleeding. As Officer Thompson attempted to speak to the man collapsed and lost consciousness. Recognizing the severe and continued blood loss, he realized he needed to act quickly to render some sort of immediate aid. Officer Thompson had a tourniquet on his person, which he was able to apply to the subject's leg just below the knee. Medical personnel arrived shortly after, and the male subject was transported to the hospital. In speaking afterwards with fire and medics, they believe that Officer Thompson's prompt application of the tourniquet to stop the man's bleeding was critical and that he probably would not have survived without it. I think the description of the event speaks for itself, but I just wanted Officer Thompson to know how proud we are of his actions that evening. His quick response, his quick thinking, his preparedness, and ability to act on his training under pressure and alone is to be commended. And so because of his actions on that evening, I want to officially present Officer Thompson with the Burlingame Police Department's life-saving medal.
Family members, would you like? Family members, come on up.
A little bit.
Do you want to get more family?
Yes, we can come.
All right, let's go down and join. we're gonna huddle behind you guys.
Oh, there you go. Can you get Pete? Yeah. Thank you.
Well, I'd wish for more of those, but that would mean people came close to dying, so I won't. But thank you very much, Officer Thompson, for being so alert and for saving that man's life. That takes us to our next presentation, and that's a proclamation recognizing June 2023 as LGBTQ plus Pride Month. And on this one, we have, did anyone formally? No. So we have a proclamation that is, as these things often are, drafted by some anonymous group, and they're full of lots of good things. But I decided that rather than read this, because you can read it, it'll be in the public record, I'd ask my colleagues to speak for a minute or so each about the importance of Pride Month and what it means, because I think it conveys more if we speak personally than if we just read somebody else's words into the record. And so I'm putting my colleagues on the spot a little bit, but if I could, Councilmember Stevenson, would you like to get us started?
It'd be my honor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I think about Pride Month, it's something that I actually think about would be good if it was all the time. You know, Pride Month's about celebrating love and celebrating our humanity. The word tolerance is important. I think that's at least one level of support, but tolerance also doesn't necessarily full support or full embracing. And so for me personally, it's something that I've tried to practice in my own life. I know my family supports that mindset as well. And I'm just glad that the city is taking the time to recognize the importance of this. It goes beyond diversity. When you think about all the intolerance that's in the world today, hopefully the power of this type of love and acceptance and support could help change things for the better.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Beach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for this opportunity. You know, when I think about Burlingame, it's about community and neighborhoods and people caring for one another. And we knew we did the right thing a couple years ago when we issued the proclamation and we raised the flag, but it's been profoundly touching to me the first year we did that, how there were couples who had been a part of this community for, together 20 years. Or, we volunteered with in the schools that were couples, same-sex partners, and another mom of a trans child who came up and said they never felt so welcome and so included, and how important the symbol of raising that flag over City Hall and doing the proclamation meant to them. And it just seemed like the right thing to do, but it really was so touching to so many people that maybe never felt quite that included before. And so I'm glad we're continuing to do it. So.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just carry on with that. We live in a little bubble here where we're very tolerant and very accepting. And so sometimes we forget that the struggle that started, I say 54 years ago with the Stonewall riots, is still going. And we hear things out of Florida these days that remind us that it's still going on and that we still have to keep vigilant. So I'm very happy that the city has raised the flag and that we are standing by our LGBTQ friends, family, and neighbors. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much. And Vice Mayor Coulson.
Thank you very much. For me, the pride flag represents the most basic of all government values, as stated in our Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all people are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which I think includes love of whoever you want. And as said in the Pledge of Allegiance, with liberty and justice for all that we say here every single night. So to me, I think this, the pride flag, the pride declaration is so critical. And one of the things that I really loved about when the pride flag was developed in 1978 was that Gilbert Baker, who is the creator in San Francisco, he never copyrighted it because he wanted it to become the flag of humanity. And it is, as I understand it, the most flown flag in the world. Over any country, any nation, any state. The pride flag flies in more places, including our US embassies where it is now allowed. And I think even the Pentagon. And so to me, that's what this is about. It's about inclusivity. It's a global movement. It's something that I'm very proud of. And bringing it back to Burlingame, I just want to say how proud I am of all of our workforce that is a member and part of the LBGT community. And I want to honor them and all the work they do and how hard they work on our behalf and how proud I am that our workforce is as diverse as it is and as welcoming as it is.
You're here. Thank you, colleagues, for expressing that. I think that means so much more than a simple proclamation from my point of view. And I shared some of these thoughts on Thursday when we raised the flag. I was struck, we had a young woman here who was part of our Youth Advisory Council, which is part of our Park and Rec. And they were talking about all the good works they did throughout the year. And they mentioned in passing, they had a conversation among the young people about diversity, equity, and inclusion and what it means to them. And I came back to that with her and I said, you know, what was your main takeaway from that conversation that you and your friends had? And she said a little bit to Councilmember Stevenson's point, she said, you know, tolerance is really good, but tolerance just means putting up with something. It means not, you know, accepting stuff. But what we really need to do is celebrate difference. We celebrate St. Patrick's Day. We celebrate Black History Month. We celebrate Jewish American History Month. And we celebrate LGBTQ month. We celebrate the right to be different. We celebrate the right to work with, to love who you want to love, to be who you want to be. And to the Vice Mayor's point, I get pretty frustrated listening to some states talking about freedom. But what they seem to mean is the freedom to believe what they believe. They don't seem to believe in the freedom to be with who you want to be, love who you want to love. And to me, that's what freedom really is. And that's what we promised everybody who is in this country. So that's what LGBTQ month and Pride Month means for us. I hope that you enjoyed hearing those comments. And I guess we don't need to do public comment, or do we just move on?
You probably should take public comment.
Okay. If anybody would like to speak on Pride Month, please join us. I see none in the audience. I'm sure that doesn't reflect how people feel, just people's shyness. Is there anybody online who'd like to speak?
We have no hands raised and I have no emails on this item.
Very good. Then that takes us through our presentations. And that brings us to public comment. This is the time on the agenda, and tonight seems like probably a little more important to point this out, where you can comment on something that's not on our agenda tonight. The fact that it's not on the agenda tonight, the rules are we can't react. We can't speak to it because it's not on the agenda. It would bear to everybody else who isn't here. So we would love to listen and we will dutifully take notes. I would like, because I have to manage the time for the entire meeting, just an informal show of hands about how many people want to speak. Okay, then I'm going to, partly for your sakes and also for our sakes, I'm going to limit public comment to 2 minutes, just quite a long time. And that way we'll get through this in under an hour. And so I would invite you to the podium and then I would ask you to queue up just to keep the line moving, so to speak. Yes, and as always, of course, we will listen to every word you have to say. if it winds up being that you want to, sort of echo your friend's comment, you can maybe do that a little more quickly, but it's up to you. I'm not telling you what to say. So please, who would like to start us off on public comment? Thank you very much for joining us.
Microphone check, check, check. Good evening, council and fellow city staff. Some of you might know me. My name is Tony Ureña. I'm a very prideful 24-year veteran here with the city of Burlingame. I'm an arborist. I maintain the city's parks and street trees. And we provide quite a bit of quality there. As you guys might have seen in our last atmospheric river storms that we probably didn't have, 50 years prior to this one?
Right.
So, yes, we were out there during COVID, working hard for this community, along with our tree services and along with many other city services, as we can see here with my colleagues. We're looking for some support, to be honest. Support in our current negotiations with the city. We're just looking for fair support to this contract with premium pay. Over the years, I've seen quite a bit of changes here where maybe we're just not retaining employees because of maybe, actually, I know I've heard where my coworkers decided to go elsewhere because of their higher pay, better benefits. When I first started, that wasn't the case. My first 15, 14 years here were very consistent with my fellow coworkers. And that really hasn't happened in the last several years. We've seen transitions here, and to me, I like to see consistency. And one way of getting that is by.
That's time, if you could wrap it up in a sentence.
Thank you, ma'am. I will. Like to see more consistency within our departments. So again, just looking for some support from our council for this fair contract with premium pay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tony. I was remiss in not beginning by thanking everybody for all the work you guys do. I mean, I think you've heard all of us in different events over the last 6 months, especially with the trees and the storms, call you all out for the hard work and the service that you provided to the people of Burlingame. And I should have started with that. I apologize. Please, sir, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, good evening. My name is Tim Healy. I'm a street and sewer supervisor for Public Works Department. We're here tonight, like Tony said, just looking for a fair, contract. We're 12.8% behind Bay Area inflation as it is. The cost of gas, the cost of PG&E, we're just here to make a living. I've been working for Burlingame for 27 years now. That's almost half my lifetime. Not quite, but almost. And I love the city of Burlingame. I love the service that we provide. And I just, like I said, like Tony said, we're looking for support from you for our contract this year. Thank you.
Thank you for.
Good evening, council. 2 minutes is not a lot of time for someone who's long-winded like me, so I'll try and make it quick. I started with I've lived and or worked in Burlingame my entire life, almost 54 years. I started in 1986 at the park department, basically because my father told me I'm not going to sit home and do nothing all summer. I wanted to work in Yosemite as a park ranger, but I felt like the city of Burlingame would be great because I could clean the parks that I used to play in and all that. So between 86 and 94, I was part-time. And during that time, there were at least three openings. And back then you needed to take a 100-question test just to go to the next step. And you had to get your name in as quick as possible because the 100 filled up very quickly. So the first 3 times I couldn't pass the test, but I've never been a very good test taker. The difference between 86 and 94 to now is now we'll put out something on the internet that says, hey, there's an opening at the park department. Now, maybe either say 9 people, maybe a little more, maybe less, will say, I want a job, when before it was 100. With 9 people, let's say, we'll ask, well, how many are qualified? Maybe 2. So between those 2, someone's hired. That person may have come from a grocery store or some other job and they don't know anything. So we teach them the aspects of working for the park department. What they do then is they take the knowledge that we give them and they end up taking that knowledge and moving on to a different city where I still talk to quite a lot of them. They're happier, they have less stress, and they make more money. I'm hoping that doesn't happen here in Burlingame and that we retain people who are really an asset to this city. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, council. My name is Mike Terrell. I've worked for the city of Burlingame as a tree trimmer, park maintenance worker for almost 15 years. Because our wages aren't keeping up with inflation, it's been harder and harder to make ends meet. We deserve fair pay that keeps up with the cost of living. Additionally, I was there for the Burlingame and the city when you guys needed us during the COVID-19 pandemic. I was one of the few parks workers who volunteered to come in the day after the city was shut down, the state was shut down, and come in away from my family to help service the parks, your parks, everyone's parks, to make sure that they were safe and serviced and green. And as everything shut down, our parks, and more importantly, again, your parks, they were here as the only place where people could go and feel welcome and not constrained or harassed. And they are still being used. In fact, they're overused now. Other cities have received premium pay for this type of work, such as Daly City, where AFSCME members got $5,500 per employee, or South San Francisco, where AFSCME got $4,800. Burlingame should recognize our hard work in the form of premium pay. I'm asking the council to please support a fair contract and premium pay to recognize the city's hardworking AFSCME employees.
Thank you very much.
Hello, City Council. Thank you all very much for your time tonight. We all really appreciate it. My name is Nick Hackelman. I've been working in the water division for 22 years. I was born and raised in this town. My family mostly still lives here. My wife's family grew up here. They are the former owners of the Copenhagen Bakery. All that to say, Burlingame is a home to me in every conceivable way, except for my inability to live here because of finances. I started out working for the city when I was 16 years old for the summer program. And after a lot of hard work and dedication, when I was graduated from high school, I got a full-time job working for the water division. It has been nothing short of an honor and a pleasure to serve a community that served me as well as this community has for my entire life. I'm not on the negotiating team this year, but I'm no stranger. In the first 10 years of my employment here, I negotiated 3 contracts with the city. I think to say that we're disheartened by the city's initial offers is an understatement. 20 years ago, the city council with Burlingame had a philosophy that we were a top-tier city and that they wanted to acquire top-tier employees. And as a result, completely unprompted from the union, the city council had a philosophy that they would keep us top 3 in the market. And that obviously has fallen to the wayside. 20 years ago, HR did the negotiations. There was no higher-powered attorney that was hired to come in and do that. I think that's put a divide between us and you guys, and I think we'd like to try to find some way to mend that that divide. I think at the end of the day, I think we're just trying to ask for a fair contract, and I think we have a little bit of catching up that we need to do. We are losing employees like crazy to all these other cities, and it's really unfortunate. I can't tell you how many people I've trained just to watch them go someplace else. All the dollars we spent on their education, they're taking somewhere else. So I think we would just like to reopen communication with you guys. We used to see you all a lot and give you tours of the water system, and that's all kind of fallen to the wayside since COVID. We just asked that we could reopen communication with you guys. Thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you. I will say, and I don't think this breaches the thing, I think you're right about COVID getting all of us out of some interactions, social interactions that we were used to, and we're all building that muscle mass back up. So I appreciate the comment.
Good evening. My name is Robert Alden. I'm a water division lead worker. I've been with the city of Burlingame for 8 years. As you may or may not know, we just reopened the hiring process again. With the current wages, we cannot attract or retain employees, which is very concerning to me. And I know all my coworkers who take a lot of pride in what we do every day. It's, as we know, we work with some of the most important utilities, and we can't keep people long enough to teach them our water distribution system, to pass that knowledge on to the next generation of workers. We've become a city that trains good employees for higher paying jobs elsewhere. In the water department, we recently lost 3 really good employees within a month, and they all went on to higher paying neighboring cities. After we put a bunch of time and effort, trying to get them to the highest level, whether it's through certification or just being an emergency response worker. In 2020, when the state was on fire, we were told to stay inside. Air quality was so bad. We were out there installing water services, doing pump checks, responding to emergency water leaks, taking health samples, making sure the water distribution system was running as it should. When COVID shut down the world, we were told, if you contracted it, it was a death sentence. But we were out there performing our jobs at the highest level. I live in a neighboring city. I had a water main break in front of my house right in the middle of the pandemic. Their answer was to shut the water off, and I didn't have water for 18 hours. That would not happen in the city of Burlingame. We're out there all night, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, sometimes 24 hours straight. We didn't have water. It was shut off in the middle of the night and it was turned back on the next night. Not because it was a difficult fix. They called someone else to fix it, but we're out there fixing it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dante Campagna. I'm a street and sewer lead worker. I've been with the city about 3.5 years. In my relatively short career compared to some of these gentlemen, I've seen 16 people just in my division alone go. That is an extremely high rate of turnover. And as they've previously said, we can't seem to retain anybody because of the pay and other reasons. My job is to repair the sewer system when it breaks and do preventative maintenance on the sewer system, which helps prevent sanitary sewer overflows, or spills as they are now called. And that prevents those and the subsequent fines that come along with them. I recently got married to my longtime girlfriend. We both grew up in the Bay Area. We would love to start a family in the place we both grew up. However, due to us being almost 13% behind cost of inflation in the Bay Area, we've come to realize that's not financially feasible. And that's heartbreaking. I'm sure if you guys were all young, when you started having families, you loved having a high paying job. And that's just not something we seem to have right now. And so that's putting my family on hold. And that's heartbreaking to me. I asked the council to please support a fair contract and recognize AFSCME's hard work and dedication for the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I want to thank the council for your time. Bear with me, I'm not really good at public speaking. In fact, the fact that I'm fully clothed is the only reason I can tell that I'm not reliving some kind of terrible nightmare. All right. So my name is Joe Meisenheimer. I've been working for the city of Burlingame Water Department since 2007, as a full-time employee since 2008. I'm currently the water service and operations technician. And when I started working here, we provided top-tier service and a top-tier service with top-tier benefits and pay. It's now 2023, and only 2 of those 3 things are still true. We still provide top-tier service in a top-tier city, but our pay has plummeted to dead last among public utilities in the peninsula. Soon after I started full-time in 2008, the housing bubble burst, and as a country, we faced great uncertainty as we seemed to be careening towards a recession that threatened to send us into another Great Depression. The city asked us for our assistance in these uncertain times to ensure no layoffs to our workforce. And we gave up 3% of our contractually agreed upon pay raises in 2009 and again in 2010. We did it under the promise that we would be compensated for our sacrifices and if and when the economy bounced back. Despite the economy bouncing back as strong as ever and Burlingame seeing record sales for real estate sales. We never got a return of a dime of what we gave up. In 2020, when the entire planet shut down in the face of a global pandemic, we were deemed essential employees, and we never wavered in our service to the city, regardless of the great risk it may have had on us and our families. When this city was rewarded with $7.5 million in COVID relief, not a dime was given to the employees that showed up for this city in the face of great adversity. And throughout water main breaks, atmospheric rivers pouring down on us, and trees toppling down at unprecedented rate, our public utilities have shown up. As cost of living and inflation soar, the working class is pushed further and further from the cities that we work in. This impacts not only our ability to respond to emergency calls, but also creates a commute that wears out even the most resilient of employees and makes retaining employees almost impossible. This is only compounded by the fact that every city on the peninsula pays better wages than Burlingame currently. If I wanted to afford to live in Burlingame, I'd have a better chance taking the same job for a different city. This is not a tenable situation.
Can you just wrap?
The services we provide cannot continue to be guaranteed without significant pay and benefit increases. We are here to implore you to show up for us the way that we have shown up for you countless times. The status of Burlingame as an elite city to live in is not debatable, and the level of service that we provide these customers is beyond reproach. But if the compensation isn't improved dramatically, this will no longer be true. And my brothers and my sisters that work in this union and the citizens of this city deserve better. Thank you.
Hi, my name is John Springer, lead worker for the Street and Sewer Division. Currently, I take care of the downtown beautification and maintenance, so all of Broadway, Burlingame, and 24 parking lots. I do all my leaf maintenance with a rake and a battery powered leaf blower, not a gas. Just so you know. Basically, I love Burlingame. I was raised here too, so go Panthers. One thing is I cannot afford to live here anymore, so that makes things tough. I remember when the Anson was first opened, the city sent out an email urging us as employees to look into the affordable housing. And as a city employee, I did not make the cut. I was able to afford the affordable housing. So we're asking for 12.8%. Basically, that gets us back to zero. It's one of our battle cries. We're not asking for much. We're just trying to get back to zero. My mom next year she's on Social Security. She's going to be getting over an 8% cost of living adjustment, and we are offered for next year a 3%. So take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
How's it going, everybody? Thank you for your time. My name is George Zamora. I've been working for the city for a little over a year and a half. I am a water maintenance worker, but I would like to be called a water operator, as that is what I'm licensed by the state. This is a great city. I was born and raised in Redwood City, but coming here has shown me how great the city has been and how much pride my coworkers have shown to their job. And that's something that I greatly appreciate. I am 21 years old. I'm still living at home. I'm trying to move out, but it's really tough with these prices. I'm sure you guys all know, I'm sure you guys make a lot more money than we do, but it's tough for us. I'm trying to find my way out. The cheapest thing I can afford is somewhere near San Jose. As an emergency responder, I currently have the phone. If somebody calls, I'll be there in less than 5 minutes. If you guys want me to be here in less than 30 minutes, as our response time says, I want to be able to live closer. Redwood City is not affordable. San Mateo is barely, I can't even think about Burlingame. Be on our side, help us. A lot of us here have families that they're struggling with. I'm by myself and it's hard. Imagine these people with the families. We just want somebody on our side to help us have a good year with this contract. We're out here day and night struggling, fixing main breaks, fixing leaks. I've had countless times where we're here 20 plus hours. That's, during the work day, going into the night, 6 a.m. I get off work, I go home for an hour, and I get called back. I'm here for the rest of the night. We just want somebody on our side. We want to get paid what we deserve. We're licensed by the state. I can go to Redwood City, get paid more, but I don't want to because I like this city. I like my coworkers. Everybody is dedicated to what we do. We all have so many traits to where it's not just we do one thing like every other city. I can get tossed around in every position and I can handle it. And I feel like that's a great trait that we have as Burlingame. So I feel like we need to get recognized for that. Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you for going.
Hello, my name is John Manson. I'm a mechanic in the Parks Department. I've been here almost 15 years. I've worked for other cities. I've spent 12 years, so I have almost 27 years working for cities. I honestly have to say I've never seen such a large amount of people leave a department. Between my 15 years and the next guy below me, there's 8 years of people leaving. I have personally tried to train a couple of people because I'm not going to work here forever. They have also gone. So, and it's always the same thing. Money, opportunity to move upwards. Because where we're at currently in the pay scale, we cannot bring those people back. We can't attract them. So we have to train them as they come, but they're not staying. This will continue to be, I will move on. I don't know who will replace me. I would like somebody that I can move through the ranks and get them knowing things that I've learned over the years about the city, the equipment, all the things it takes to do that. But apparently that's probably not going to happen if things continue to stay the way they are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor and council, my name is Rich Stevens. I'm a lead worker in the water department as well. We've heard a lot of talk about turnover, and it really struck me when George was up here saying he's only been here a year and a half. We have 7 maintenance workers in the water department, and there are 2 who've been here longer than George, and there are 5 or 4 who've been here less than him. We've been here a year and a half. That's how much turnover we've had. These guys come here, they get licensed, get trained, and they move on somewhere else. And that work, we want to provide people in Burlingame deserve a high level of service. They want it, and we need to provide it. And to do that, we need to be able to retain these employees, attract employees. Like you've heard, we're 12.8% behind the cost of living in the last 11 years. So we're trying to get back to 0 on that and not fall any further behind. There was a time, even when I started here, a lot of our workers were able to live in town, and now none are. We've got guys driving from Manteca, all over the East Bay, and they're spending hundreds of dollars a month just in bridge tolls just to get here. And we're worried about emissions from leaf blowers, and we're having these guys drive hundreds and hundreds of miles a week. That's a little, we need to think about that. So, yeah, that's all.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to join us?
Hi, good evening. My name is Ryan Shannon. I'm president of ASME Local 829. I'm here to represent thousands of employees all across San Mateo County, in both public and private employers. I'm also a 911 dispatcher with San Mateo County for the last 20 years. Tonight, I'm here in solidarity with my fellow ASME members to ask that you support a fair contract. All across the county, numerous employers are doing the right thing and reaching equitable agreements with their employees. Employees here are the wheel that makes the city run. They've been here through the pandemic and through the storms, but more than that, they're here each and every day doing the work of the city. How have they been rewarded for these efforts? They've been rewarded by effectively taking a 13% pay cut over the last decade or so. It's not a matter of if these members have earned the fair contract, because they have. It's a matter of the body here has the will to put and the determination to make your actions speak louder than your words. And I hope that you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tristan Kent. I'm executive board member on Council 57. I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of this chapter. I just want to, reiterate what I see. I see a lot of people who are frustrated with their employers. I see a lot of people who feel like they have to uproot their families because they can't continue in existence here in the city that they work for. I see a lot of people who were once called for what's called essential workers being treated as less than. There is no reason that they should not be having a fair shot at a fair contract with this employer. It seems like the city of Burlingame has turned into a revolving door of an employer, and that this contract would go to help put an end to that. And I really hope that you guys are willing to support these AFSCME members here. Thank you.
Thank you for.
Hello, City Council members. My name is Rod Palmquist, and I am the new business agent for AFSCME Local 829's 5,000 members. AFSCME's members work on the front lines of the city, cleaning and maintaining our streets and sewers, maintaining our parks, running rec programs, staffing our libraries, assisting the police department with records, evidence and parking enforcement, maintaining our water, cleaning and maintaining our city's buildings, and performing all of the essential administrative support functions that make Burlingame work, among many other critical public services. In previous contracts with our union, the city has paid AFSCME only 2% raises. This is not enough. This is not enough for the skyrocketing costs of living in the Bay Area, which only last June were over 6.8%. Rich already mentioned this, but right before this open public meeting, you talked about equity issues with the use of gas-powered leaf blowers and how in some of your homes, you use electric blowers or ask your gardeners to. You also talked about the need for Spanish translation for gardeners in the city. These are important topics, but I can't help to contrast this discussion with the realities that AFSCME's members are facing. Our members in Burlingame and elsewhere can't afford to live in the cities where we work. We have to commute longer and longer distances, contribute to pollution and climate change, and spend more time away from our families in order to get by. And as far as Spanish translation goes, your public works management doesn't think Spanish is a language that's necessary in Burlingame for bilingual pay. A clear act of discrimination that AFSCME has filed a grievance over. The city needs to step up and put your actions and money behind your words of thanks. Please prioritize your city employees. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to comment this evening, either on the issue of the evening or on any other issue of interest that's not on our agenda? And just before you all take off, are there any comments online, Madam City Clerk?
Yes, we do have 22 individuals in attendance, no one with their hand raised, but I do have 3 emails. Our first email comes from Joe. He says, or Joseph, says, hello, I believe other members of AFSCME are speaking during item 9 about a recent proposal during bargaining, but I am unable to attend. I wanted to provide some information from a survey sent to city staff during our outreach for the housing element process. The council and other staff have seen these results previously, but I thought it may serve as additional basis to illustrate the cost burden shared by many city staff and underscore the need for greater COLA increases. The following language is viewable on page 16 of the PDF for Appendix B Community Outreach Summary. Findings from the survey of city staff. More than 50% of city staff responded to the housing survey conducted at the city council's request. The city has approximately 220 full-time employees, and there was 126 responses to the survey. The survey asked how many staff live outside of Burlingame and if those staff would prefer to live in Burlingame if housing in their price range was available. Staff were also asked to gauge their interest in living in housing that might be included in a redevelopment of City Hall. The city staff results indicated 82% live outside of Burlingame, 66% would like to live in Burlingame if housing they could afford was available, 18% already live in Burlingame, 30% commute at least 30 minutes each way, 18% commute 45 minutes or more each way, 64% would want to participate if the city provided rental housing for employees, and 61% would consider housing located on top of or adjacent to a new city hall. Thank you. Our next email comes from Stephanie. She says, "Good evening, Mayor and council members. I've worked for Burlingame for over 8 years in administrative support roles. I'm asking the council to please support a fair contract to recognize the city's hardworking AFSCME employees. Our current offer is less than half of what the previous bargaining unit was approved for in December 2022. And our last email comes from Jim. He states, "The City of Burlingame's public works slogan is quality community service. We are providing the highest quality service to our restaurants, but aren't being paid accordingly. Burlingame is one of the most affluent cities in the state. The average home here sells for $2.5 million, and yet the public works employees of Burlingame are the second lowest paid in the peninsula. We are experiencing the highest turnover rate in the city's history. A majority of our employees have to commute across the bay, and some employees commute as far as Tracy and Manteca. We aren't asking for higher wages so we can have nice things. We are asking for higher wages to simply try to make ends meet. This is a major concern for the employees who work for Burlingame."
Thank you. I think that brings an end to public comment. And as I said at the very beginning, we're not allowed to react or have any kind of substantive conversation for reasons to do with the way the laws are written. But I want you to know two things. One, we all heard you. And those of you who didn't stand up, we heard you too by you being here. So thank you for paying us the respect of coming and talking to us. We appreciate it. And I want to thank you also, as I have many times and my colleagues have too, for all of that hard work that you've done over the years, but especially over this last winter. We are very aware of how hard you guys all have worked to make sure trees were safe, water was on, people could cook and take care of their families in their homes. So I can't say much more than that, but I want you to know that we heard you loud and clear tonight, and we appreciate you being here. And we appreciate your service to Burlingame. You're welcome. We need to move on through our agenda, but I'm going to just take a minute, let people leave, and then we'll continue. Thank you again for being here, y'all. Take care. Colleagues, that takes us to the consent calendar. We have a record number of items on consent, stretching through letter T. I think our city manager will only be happy when we get to Z on some evening. I do want to point out what she often does, that this reflects a great deal of work for our city staff. So we may pass it in the matter of minutes, but they have worked hours and hours to make all of this happen. I will start by asking whether colleagues have any items they'd like to pull or further conversation. I see none. Are there any members of the public, Madam City Clerk, who'd like to call an item off the consent?
I don't have any emails and I don't see any hands raised, our online participants.
In which case,
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the items on the consent agenda.
which would be items A through T.
And A-
Just if you would, Mr. Ortiz, just to make sure there's nobody in the audience who wants to pull any.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's my bad for not going in. Anyway, so no, so the,
Okay,
Member Ortiz has a motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Stevenson to approve the consent calendar. If we could do a roll call vote.
Councilmember Stevenson,
Yes.
Councilmember Ortiz.
Yes.
Councilmember Beach,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Coulson.
Yes.
Mayor Brownrigg.
Yes. Thank you, colleagues, and thank you especially to the city manager and her team for all of that work that, as I say, we handled in a matter of a couple of minutes, and they took many, many hours to handle. That takes us to item 11, public hearings, and the first is our downtown Burlingame Avenue streetscape improvement project. And I see our wonderful Director of Public Works at the podium. I assume this is your item.
Yes, yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you for the opportunity here. So this is an annual item that we bring to you for your approval as part of the public hearing process. From a procedural point of view, you're asked to hold a public hearing and adopt it based on the feedback, any protests that you may receive. You may decide to adopt the attached resolution confirming the assessments and ordering the levy for the downtown Burlingame Avenue Streetscape Improvement District 2012-1 for the fiscal year 2023 and 24. A brief background, in 2012, the City Council took a series of actions which resulted in the formation of Burlingame Avenue Streetscape Improvement Assessment District 2012-1. The assessment district was formed under the provisions of the Landscaping and Lighting Act of 1972, Part 2, Division 15 of the California Streets and Highway Code. This was done through a ballot measure and which did not receive any majority protest, which allowed the City Council to call to order improvements and form the district. The total cost of the assessment district was $335,787 annually for 30 years. As part of that, City Council approved the district and issued bonds to build the downtown streetscape improvements on Burlingame Avenue. The engineer's report is annually updated to reflect any changes that may have occurred over the year to year, and the act requires that annual public hearing be conducted. The total assessment for the fiscal year 23-24 is $310,156, which reflects the prepayment made by the property owners. There are no changes to the annual assessment from last year. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Director Mertusa? I see none. Do we have any comments online, Madam City Clerk?
We have no hands raised and no.
And are there any members of the public who'd like to speak on this item? I see none. Pretty straightforward stuff. If there are no questions, I would entertain a motion. I forget which we're doing here.
11A.
Sorry.
11A.
Yeah.
So it's a resolution. You want
So
on this?
somebody,
Do we have to do a public hearing? Do we have to?
we did a public.
Oh, sorry.
It's all right. Breezed right through it.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and let me make sure I get this just right because we have so many things here. We'll have a resolution. Let me just pop it up. Resolution of City Council confirming the assessment and ordering the levy for the downtown Burlingame Avenue Streetscape Improvements Assessment District 2012-1 for fiscal year 23-24.
I'll second.
Thank you very much to you both. The motion made by Vice Mayor, seconded by Councilmember Beach. If we could do a roll.
Councilmember Stevenson,
Yes.
Councilmember Ortiz,
Yes.
Councilmember Beach.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Coulson,
Yes.
Mayor Brownrigg.
Yes. Item passes 5-0. Takes us to item 11B, which is a public hearing and adoption of resolutions for our FY 23-24 operating and capital budgets, and other associated measures that go along with that, including a contribution to the city's pension fund, because the city was for so many years behind on its pension contributions. Who is going to take this? Director Hugh Scott, please.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thank you for very much for the opportunity to present the proposed budget for fiscal year 23-24 for tonight public hearing. Next slide, please. So here's the agenda for tonight. I will cover some of the budget highlight for fiscal year 23-24 and then changes that we have made since last budget study session on May 10th. And also review the citywide general fund CIP as well as a 5-year forecasting budget summary. By the end, we will have time for questions and we will ask council consider 3 resolutions. Next slide, please. Here's some highlight for development fiscal year 23-24 budget. We are expecting a moderate revenue growth with property tax, sales tax, and the TOT tax meet or exceed current year our expectations. The budget also calls spending exceed revenue by about 2.4 million, which is going to show up as a draw from city general fund unassigned fund balance. In addition to the $868,000 we are contribute towards our 115 pension trust, we are going to continue reliance on reserves. In terms for capital investment reserve, was all earmarked for 2 big projects, the Great Separation Project and also El Camino Real Utility Underground Project. The project balance, these 2 projects are planning to be starting in fiscal year 24-25 and 25-26. And also some preliminary work will be done in fiscal year 23-24. The staff have request for $600,000 draw from this reserve to cover those costs. The budget developer still focused on the short term, and the priority is maintain excellent service to our resident. Next slide, please. So even though the city council did not direct any changes to the budget at the May 10 study session, the budget is presented to you tonight, include a few adjustments. One of the adjustment is when we dropped the personnel position budgeting, we allocated one of the maintenance worker position to the sewer fund instead of general fund. Now we fixing this allocation, which is the impact to general fund will be $157,000. We also, the staff made a mistake with missed library department budget line item for electric and the gas line item and also water consumption. So now we include add this budget back to the proposed budget for general fund. The impact for the electric and gas is about $150,000, and then the water consumption is $12,500. That's why the review process is great. Catch those kind of things, give us a chance to fix in these items. The staff also included 2003-2010 state water resource control board loan, the principal payment. Normally in the principal payment for enterprise fund is balance sheet item, is not budget in the expenditure side. But however, the city's past practice, we've been put on the as part of like a capture the cash flow. So we do include in the as show as the expenditure side. So those kind of impact with the early the relocation of the personnel will be total $775,000. The impact is to the sewer fund, not general fund. So staff also updated 5-year general fund forecasting to reflect such changes to the general fund impact. Next slide, please. So next few slides will provide high-level summary for budget documentation. So let's start with the proposed 23-24 citywide budget. The proposed citywide budget is about $149 million, which is $14.6 million more than last year. The changes are more than $3.3 million towards general fund and then nearly $10.4 million for capital improvement program and $1.3 million for water and sewer fund combined. As indicated in this pie chart, the majority of the expenditure, 74.52 million or 50% belong to general fund, which is fund city's main operation. Next slide, please. Now let's look at the city general fund operating fund. This slide showing general fund revenue. The top three revenue account for close to $67 million or 83.3% of general fund revenue. Pre-pandemic in fiscal year 2018-19, general fund revenue was about 84 million. For 23-24, it's about $4 million shy from it. So here's general fund revenue. Next slide, please. So as the city tried to contain the cost, the general fund expenditure for next year budget are up 4.7% or $3.3 million compared to current year revised budget. The 37.8% increase was in personnel expenditure, up nearly 3.5% overall due to the estimated COLA increase in the salary, wages, and benefit cost increase such as medical, pension, and OPEB. So nothing really standing out is more COLA increase for personnel as well as contractual services. Next slide, please. So the proposed budget also include contribution to pension trust. This is a slide showing by fund. The general fund contribution is about 0.9 million. During the May 10 session, we have 864,000 because the SOAR staff relocation does impact general fund and then SOAR enterprise fund contribution. So general fund increased by 4,000 and then SOAR reduced by 4,000. So the general fund per citywide is about 1.2 million. Estimated balance in the pension trust is nearly $17.4 million as of June 30, 2023. Next slide, please. So in summary, general fund revenue of 80.51 million are used to cover operating expenditure, such as regular operation expenditure, 74.52 million, and 6.62 for capital improvement program, and debt service about 3.62, and also we recover some cost from other funds for the general admin service provided by general fund personnel. So which is result operating deficit about 2.4 million. After we continue to contribute $0.9 million pension trust contribution, we'll leave the deficit about $3.25 million. Next slide, please. Here again, you can see how the fund balance change for the city reserve. So even though the general fund is expected to run a deficit 2.386 million, the unassigned balance, which is really the discretional reserve for the city to has will drop to 2.39. Here the two number kind of a little bit confusing. It's very close to each other, about $2.4 million. So out of those $41.6 million fund balance, 46.5% fund balance is for economic stability reserve. 41.8% is for restrictable pension trust, and for unassigned fund balance, about 5.8%. Next slide, please. So besides city's general fund reserve, city also has about 20.6 million in capital investment reserve. However, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, the reserve was earmarked for 2 projects. City will not able to contribute to this reserve, have been not for the last 3 years, and will not be able to until we are fully recovered from the pandemic. More is look at our TOT revenue recovery. Next slide, please. So for the capital improvement program budget, about 32.3 million for upcoming fiscal year. The top 3 project area almost made up 77% CIP budget. They're about 38% for street relay project, and then followed by more than 25 for park and 14% for order. Out of this 32.3 million, more than 20% funding or 6.62 million was out of general fund, mainly for street and the park project. $2.5 million for street, which is include $2 million from Measure I, and then about $500,000 from regular general fund balance, and then about $4.12 million for park related project. Kudos to the public works staff. They did a great job to secure grant funding for the capital improvement program, which is really helping us moving forward with this project. Next slide, please. So maintain the city essential service and reserve staff as much as possible. The city has held back on its contribution to CIP program. So this slide showing general fund contribution to CIP, the history, we have been dropping from 2018, 19, 10 million when we deal with the pandemic, 2021, 21, 22, and lower to $3 million. Now we slowly scale back. I guess 24, 25, 25, 26 will be big funding we'll need from general fund contribution. As right now, it's about $20 million for next couple of years upcoming. So we are need to prepare for that funding need. Next slide, please. Based on general fund 5-year forecasting, one can see we have a steady recovery of the revenue. However, increasing the need capital improvement program and also put pressure on the general fund balance. City continue to deepen the reserve in order to fund its operation and the capital needs. I think in last few sessions, council mentioned about, we need to recognize in the revenue, we burn like $80 million for 23-24, and the expenditure for operation itself is $74 million. And we do need funding for CIP. I think CIP is kind of cost mainly to burn up, make our deficit spending here. So next slide, please. So this slide showing general fund balance assignment back to fiscal year 2018-19, city assigned and unassigned fund balance was nearly $41 million. Now the proposed fiscal year 23-24 balance about $24 million. If we look forward for fiscal year 24-25, the fund balance will be combined with 17 as the economic stability reserve up to $20 million, which means we are going to need using funding either from reserves, reduced reserve, either draw down from economic stability reserve or from other funding sources as we need it, such as using pension trust or OPEB trust. So, however, as time goes on, capital improvement needs will be getting bigger. We will not able to sustain unless draw down from further and utilize other funding sources. Next slide, please. So, before I conclude my presentation, I always want to acknowledge the people contribute to this budget process. First of all, I want to thanks to Karen Chow, Finance Service Manager, who working with me on this budget this year. We have put in a lot of long hours, and also entire finance team for their everyday support. Without them, we cannot bring this documentation forward timely manner. And also I want to thanks to all the department head and also their team for their time effort to work on this proposal. I also appreciate City Manager Lisa Goldman for her guidance through this budget process, as well as her special talent to make the narrative really flow smoothly. So she have really, utilized her work. Smith helped me prepare this documentation. And this budget release is a teamwork, the collaboration from our department. The last but not least, I really appreciated all council members for your leadership and the guidance for our city staff. Thank you so much. With that, I'll conclude my presentation. So any question you may have.
Thank you very much for a thorough overview of work that we've been tracking pretty carefully over the last 3 and 6 months. Colleagues, are there questions for our Director of Finance? I see none. And again, for anybody watching at home, that I think is because we've been over these numbers quite often and in great depth before. Yes, so Vice Mayor Coulson.
So I have just a quick benchmarking question. as other cities are doing their budgets, does anyone know where we are in relation? Like, are they all back in the black? Are we the only one in the red? You know, where are we to our neighbors?
I can't speak for every city, but I did see a headline, I think it was today in the Daily Journal, about the significant challenges that Redwood City has. So there's certainly a mix. Some are doing fine, some are back. I think Millbrae had a balanced budget this year. Well, we all have to balance our budgets, but I think Millbrae is doing a little bit better. They have all that new development that's helping them. Redwood City is challenged. They're looking at revenue measures. A colleague of mine is the interim in San Bruno, and they had a struggle this year trying to get their budget done. So I think definitely we're not all doing well.
Okay.
It's a mix.
And just sort of one other question on the future revenue projections. So we have Topgolf, I hope, is breaking ground, working. Do we have any idea, how's that going, and is that so money in here or not?
No, we don't put the money in forecast until we know when we're going to get it. Topgolf is struggling with the regulatory agencies right now. So Margaret actually just got an email from them saying, do you know anyone at Cal Recycle? Because having issues there. So they have to get through a number of regulatory agencies, and it's just not easy. It's a funny piece of land with the closed landfill. And so it's just a challenge for them. So when we know that money is going to be in our hot little hands, then we'll put it into the budget. But, you know, it's not a good idea to spend money you don't have.
No, I totally agree. And it seems to me, and I can save a comment for later if you want, or.
I think we
Okay.
be in the comments.
Okay, thank you. I'm a little sad that our staff from earlier this evening didn't stay or didn't comment during this item, because we could respond to this under this, because it's budget. I mean, pay scale and what we pay our employees is absolutely 100% under budget. So I'm just a little sad. And I mean, we are still running a negative budget. And this puts us in a very, really a place where we have to be really innovative, and we have to think about how we're going to meet the demands of the high quality services that we continue to provide in this city. Doing innovative work, like trying to get this Topgolf lease signed and getting a couple million a year coming in, $1.5 million coming in from that. The taxes, the tax measure, the quarter-cent sales tax. And then obviously getting our hoteliers back on their feet. And I know the chamber is working really hard on that. And the hoteliers are optimistic, but until all these pieces come together, I think that's what's kind of causing the drag on our ability to deliver, probably, I'm sure, wages that we'd all like to deliver. And I'm hoping that, some of these other comments like, housing and things, it's really becoming clear to me how critical and important housing is going to be as a potential way to help our staff, as a potential way to help them. And I'm hearing it from teachers too. Obviously, I'm spending a lot of time on schools, but with regard to the budget, I know we're going to have to pass this one, but I think we should start thinking about how, how we can create stable revenues that can help us to address this, inflationary and high cost of living in our town in the future. It's not necessarily something we have to stop tonight, but it's really going to be need some brain power to think about it, and might even be a good study session topic down the road. Other than that, I mean, I think it's a good budget. It runs a small deficit that we pull out of reserves. The actual operating budget is positive, which I'm happy about, and it's really the capital improvements that roll over into that. But it's a budget I think we can be proud of, knowing we're going to have some challenges ahead in the next year or two that we're going to really have to tackle.
Thank you for those comments. Are there other comments or questions from colleagues? Seeing none. Oh,
No, Mr. Mayor, I was just going to tack on to one thing the vice mayor said that I think is really important. The operating budget, is coming back. And yes, it's the investment in capital improvements, but also our pension trust investment that we're committed to, right? We're continuing to try to invest and get ahead of that. So I'm proud of us for making a commitment to capital improvements and the pension trust. This budget.
yep. Thank you for that. Open it up a public hearing. Is there anybody in the public who'd like to comment on the budget? I see no one in the audience. Anybody at home?
We have no hands raised and we have no emails.
Okay. I'm going to close the public hearing. Are there any other comments that colleagues would like to make?
Mr. Mayor, I just have a question for each of these resolutions. Do we need to separately? Okay.
Yep. Better for the record.
I just,
Sure, go ahead.
you're about to move into a motion. That's awesome. I just wanted to agree with the vice mayor that I think trying to find a new way of thinking about the budget and having these conversations, shaping these conversations, I think would be a good thing. Every process sometimes just gets a little bit stale, and so I welcome that idea. I'm not sure exactly what that means or how we'll create it, but I think it's worth doing. I do think, we believed in this council created a general plan that would lead to redevelopment because we wanted the output of that redevelopment. We wanted more housing. We wanted more improvements on the Bayside. And those were the reasons we did it. It does have a secondary benefit, which is to help continue to see property tax grow. And that is one of the revenue sources that I think we all know is more stable than some of the other sources. And although I know I'm saying this, what everyone here knows, I still think, and I really wasn't sure how much I could say with everybody in the room, but for a business that runs a $75 million budget, the general fund, to lose $24 million in 1 year from one line item and not lay people off and not furlough people and so forth, I think we all can always be proud of that record. Obviously, it's not the same as having more money in your pay packet. I think we all understand that. I'll conclude with this, which is I think this budget is the proverbial green shoots of spring, and it's beginning to see the turnaround. You're starting to see numbers that look a little bit more like they did in 2018-19 in terms of revenue. So I do look forward, as the vice mayor suggests, in thinking about what can we do now that we're coming out the other side. And yes, Councilmember Stevenson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just would echo the opportunity that a study session could look at. Sometimes you get into the incrementalism, and I certainly haven't been on the council to know the history from 2018 to now and what we had to go through. But from a revenue basis and stability of those revenue bases, I think thinking a little bit, taking a step back and saying, if we were going to do this, from scratch, what are some of the things that we maybe get back on the table?
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And I would say that it's an interesting sort of inflection point. We really are emerging from COVID. The economy really is bouncing back. We have largely paid down that pension debt that we inherited from prior councils. I mean, another point that I didn't say is there may have been bigger pay increases. They were not putting enough money against pensions. And so what this council has done, and it's more of a hidden benefit, is make sure the pensions are properly funded. But we had this conversation. If you make a promise, you need to keep a promise. And that's what this council's been doing. But we're at the end of that point of having to continue to put into the pension catch up, or we're getting close anyway.
Not quite there yet. Let's not
Not
go
quite-
crazy.
But the point is, there's sort of, it does begin to feel like.
Yeah.
We've done the hard work and now we get to think about some new things to invest in. So anyway, I'm sorry about all of that. I would welcome Madam Beach, if that's where you were going.
Sure. So I guess the first one we need to take is, I'll make a motion to adopt the fiscal year 23-24 operating and capital budgets, authorizing the finance director to assign uses of fund balance amounts.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Beach, seconded by Councilmember Ortiz. Could we have a roll call vote?
Councilmember Stevenson,
Yes.
Councilmember Ortiz,
Yes.
Councilmember Beach.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Coulson.
Yes.
Mayor Brownrigg.
Yes. Welcome a motion to approve the GAN appropriation limit.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by the Vice Mayor, seconded by Councilmember Ortiz. If we could do a roll call vote.
Councilmember Stevenson,
Yes.
Councilmember Ortiz.
Yes.
Councilmember Beach.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Coulson.
Yes.
Mayor Brownrigg.
Yes, and finally, I'd welcome a motion to approve the contribution to our city's pension benefit trust account.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Ortiz, seconded by Vice Mayor Coulson. To do a roll call vote.
Councilmember Stevenson,
Yes.
Councilmember Ortiz.
Yes.
Councilmember Beach.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Coulson.
Yes.
Mayor Brownrigg.
Yes, and so therefore we have approved budget. Thank you again, Director Scott, for all of that hard work. That takes us into staff reports and communications. But there are none, right?
Correct.
We move on to 13, council committee and activities reports. I actually do have a couple of items I want to share. Would anyone else like to share anything?
Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, please,
No,
Vice Mayor, no,
I think,
for you.
okay. Or I was gonna say Councilwoman Beach may have something too. Just so you know.
I do have one short one.
Okay, so mine sort of ties back in with Peninsula Clean Energy. I just wanted to make everyone aware of two things. We passed a comprehensive 45-page, 2-year DEAI project. Very welcome. It was a lot of work. It was wonderful. I got to chair that committee. I would suggest if anybody has an interest that you pick it up and take a look at it and read it. I think it could be applicable for other agencies on which we sit. So for example, the garbage district might be one. But you know, more importantly, it just set a very appropriate standard for a framework from which we can make decisions on everything from hiring to procurement. And as we began to work on this, I'm also chairing audit and finance there. And this year, the budget has come in and, you know, our budget there is incredibly volatile and it's complicated, but it has to do with the PCIA. And so right now we're about a $400 million a year revenue company. And we are approaching in the next 2 or 3 years, something like 400 to 450 days cash on hand. So we're going to be doing a lot of we're going to have a lot of conversations around what to do and how to reinvest this capital, which, you know, I might ask that the mayor consider putting, you know, maybe it's you and I, because we're the 2 subcommittee members, but I would love to hear from my colleagues, because they think it's super important matter of, you know, what types of things we could maybe do. So maybe it's even our own little study session again within the council so that we can represent back to PCE some ideas and thoughts about how that funding could be used equitably and the kinds of things to meet the goals of the organization. It's a lot of money and it's garnering a lot of attention. And I just don't feel comfortable. I know what we can do. I have some ideas, but I would feel much more comfortable involving colleagues in this conversation as to report back on it. So with that, I'll leave it to you. But for example, one thing might be something like we talked about this evening earlier. So if the mayor would indulge me in a way we can figure out how to do this in the future, that'd be great.
Quite sure I speak for your colleagues in saying we would welcome that conversation, and why don't we invite you and the city manager to discuss workflow and what the best way of getting it on the agenda is. I mean, in other words, we'll consider it a future agenda.
I mean, it kind of falls under both. It's a report.
Yeah, no, right. But we'll let you and city manager work out the best format, but we'd welcome that conversation, quite sure. Councilmember Beach.
Thanks. Just a brief update that I think is of interest. The Caltrain organization, the JPB, I think I've mentioned before, is looking at a comprehensive a study for a grade crossing strategy for the entire corridor. Something that the local policymakers group has been sort of advocating to have on the table for a long time. COVID kind of tabled it, but they're in full force. Had the first in-person workshop at Palo Alto City Hall. Say the big takeaways again are that, you know, they're evaluating right now different options, whether or not projects should consider keep going it alone, kind of like Broadway has done, where we kind of do our own advocacy and different projects come to fruition fully from the local level, if there's a more systems-wide approach. No decision that will be made will affect current projects in the pipeline. So Broadway is still first in line. We're in good shape. But I would say the most interesting takeaways, they really had a deep dive at this workshop about the trade-offs of what the system-wide approach would be, the good and the bad, right? More grade separations throughout the corridor as more trains come through, a look at where grade crossings could potentially, grade separations could exist that maybe cities haven't planned for, but also the possibility of closing some current at-grade crossings. Just as a system-wide approach, there may be some current at-grade crossings that shouldn't exist anymore. And certainly when they did the little map and the trade-offs, there were a number in Burlingame that could be further grade separated or potentially closed. So as these are just in the very preliminary, you know, conceptual, how could this play out? But it's worth paying attention to. All the documents are on there. I'll just continue to summarize as there's relevancy, but there's some really important work being trained, and we appreciate their thinking. I think it's for the good of the railroad.
Thank you so much for sharing. If there are none others, I'll just be real quick. I'll start with the bad news. So we learned today that our Broadway grant with the Federal Railroad Association was not granted. That's very painful. I don't know if the city manager wants to add anything. I just got a headline note from our congressional representative, but.
Yeah, they were not giving large dollars out for the projects. And so the largest project was 41 million. Lots of them were under $1 million. We were asking for considerably more money. So it's likely that we just were too big an ask for this first round. Our federal lobbyist is working to get us a meeting with the staff at FRA, Federal Railroad Administration, so that we can figure out, you know, what's going on and how do we get in that pipeline, because we have a really strong case to be made and we keep making it and keep not being successful. We are asking for a lot more than they're giving out right now.
Yeah, I mean, just to put that in context, so our ask is in the mid-7 total grant app. The total grant money across the entire United States was about 500 million. So it was so back to the drawing board. But we have, I mean, as with electoral races, every time you run, even if you don't win, people are more aware of the issue, more aware of the priority. And certainly on Capitol Hill, and I built on the work that prior mayors did. There's a growing awareness of this issue. So just thought I'd share that. We will come back soon with an update on ECR. There was a good meeting today the subcommittee had with Caltrans. There's a lot of support and a lot that's going to be happening in terms of public outreach in the next 8 weeks. So we want Kyle to be up to speed on that. And we're all singing from the same sheet. So we'll come back to you on that. And then finally, very proud to report that after 3 years of work, we have on the HART board, which I now chair, we have agreed to create a preservation fund and to go out and get financing for it. It is, that agency can do more. It needs to do more. The county deserves more, but at least we have the board and the management behind the idea of growth and taking more risk and doing more stuff. So I wanted to report that, and we'll probably create some sort of briefing paper for every city that describes this new program at HART. So, okay, that then is done with the council committee and activities reports. Future agenda items, we've talked about one already. Is there anything else that somebody would like to add? I'd like to suggest one and say this because I'm out of arm's reach of our city. But I've actually raised this before, and that is to try to understand the program the county has with Millbrae with respect to the homeless.
We're actually working on that already.
Yay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't have a date for you, but we are working on it.
Okay, perfect. We all received an input, but I think we've also been witness to the issue and wanting to try to get ahead of the curve here in our city, understand what we're going to do to be humane, but also effective. And so I'm delighted that we'll have this as an agenda item at some point in the future. Okay, anything else for proposal? No, in that case, then that brings us to adjournment. Would anyone like to adjourn our meeting in honor, in memory of somebody? I see none. I know of none. And so with that, I bid you good night.
Night.